My mother walked through the door like she owned the place. Funny thing is, she didn't. Not anymore. The leather folder with my name on it, the one sitting right there on the table with $50 million worth of hotel deeds inside, made that pretty clear. My grandmother had just handed me everything she'd built. Everything my mother thought would eventually be hers. And judging by the look on Mom's face, she wasn't taking it well. "We should manage it together," she said, smile stretched so tight I thought her face might crack. "As a family." Her new husband Ryan stood behind her, nodding like one of those dashboard bobbleheads. He'd been whispering in her ear for months about restructuring opportunities and maximizing assets. Translation: they wanted control of my inheritance before the ink on the documents even dried. I looked at the folder. Then at her. Then back at the folder. "Absolutely not," I said. "I'm the owner now." The smile disappeared. Her voice went cold, sharp as broken glass. "Then pack your bags and leave this house." I didn't argue. I didn't move either. Because I knew something they didn't. That night wasn't about their demands or their threats. It was about Grandma's next move. One that would end their little performance for good. Let me back up. When people look at me now, they see the hotel. The marble floors, the glass lobby, my name etched in gold above the entrance. They see success, legacy, all that stuff that looks good in photos. What they don't see is the absolute chaos that used to live inside this family. My grandmother, Virginia Sterling, built everything from one roadside motel in Vermont. She was 21, my age now, and everyone told her she was crazy. A young woman trying to run a business in the 60s. They laughed at her, called her foolish, reckless, in over her head. She turned those doubts into brick and revenue. By the time I was born, the Sterling collection had become a name people whispered with a mix of respect and envy. Hotels in 5 states. A reputation that meant something. My mother, Meredith, inherited none of Grandma's patience. Only her pride. To Mom, success wasn't about building things. It was about being seen. She loved camera flashes more than blueprints, loved control more than family. She'd show up at ribbon-cutting ceremonies in designer dresses, give interviews about carrying on the family tradition, then disappear for months while other people did the actual work. My father, David, was the opposite. Calm, steady, the kind of man who believed in doing things right even when it took longer. He ran operations for years, quietly keeping everything standing while Mom chased appearances and headlines. When I was 16, I watched that balance collapse. I still remember the night Dad left. His eyes looked so tired. Suitcase by the door. He said he couldn't stay where love had become performance, where every moment felt staged for an audience that didn't exist. The silence that followed him out that door was the kind that fills every corner and never leaves. Mom didn't even cry. She just stood there in the hallway, already on her phone, already moving on. Like 20 years of marriage was just another failed business venture. I heard her on a call the next morning, laughing with someone about being newly single and ready to explore options. Dad hadn't even been gone 12 hours. That's when I realized my mother didn't actually feel things the way normal people do. She performed emotions. Anger when it served her. Sadness when it got attention. Love when there was something to gain. After that, Mom remarried. Fast. Ryan Blackwell showed up 6 months later, a smooth-talking business consultant who spoke in corporate buzzwords like synergy and global expansion. He was everything Mom thought success looked like. Shiny, loud, and completely hollow. Not long after the wedding, she sent me to live with Grandma. Said it was for stability, for my education, so I could focus on school without all this drama. I knew better. I was just one less witness to whatever she and Ryan were planning. Life with Grandma was different. Quiet, but never dull. Her home smelled like cedar and coffee. Her morning started with the sound of typewriter keys. Yeah, she still used one, clicking away as she answered correspondence, reviewed contracts, made notes about properties. She treated me like an apprentice, not a kid. While I studied architecture at university, she showed me what legacy actually meant. Discipline. Risk. The courage to start over when everyone else calls you finished. Sometimes at night, I'd find her looking over old property maps. The original sketches she'd drawn by hand back in the beginning. She'd trace the outlines with this soft smile and say, "Every building tells a story, Rebecca. The walls remember who built them and why." I didn't understand back then that she was talking about people too. About the kind of foundations we build within ourselves. Years passed. Mom's calls grew shorter, her words sharper. "You should visit," she'd say. "Ryan wants to talk about the European market." I always had an exam or a project due. The conversations would end with her disappointed sigh, that little guilt trip exhale she'd perfected. We were strangers connected by blood and legal paperwork. Nothing more. Until that morning. My 21st birthday. Grandma asked me to sit at her desk. The leather folder was waiting there, heavy and unfamiliar. She slid it across to me, fingers steady. "This is your inheritance," she said. "But it's also your test." I opened it slowly. Hotel deeds. Trust documents. Bank accounts with numbers that didn't feel real. My name on everything. "Why now?" I asked. Grandma leaned back in her chair, studying me. "Because you're the same age I was when I started. Because you've earned it. And because your mother needs to learn that some things can't be manipulated or charmed away." "She's going to fight this," I said. "I'm counting on it," Grandma replied. I didn't know what she meant. Not yet. But I was about to find out. Dinner that night felt almost normal. Roasted lamb, candlelight flickering across the long oak table, Grandma smiling in that rare peaceful way she had. The house was quiet, filled only with the sound of silverware against china. I remember thinking maybe things were finally settling down. Maybe we could just be okay. Then the doorbell rang. It's funny how one small sound can change everything. I got up, napkin still in my hand. When I opened the door, the cold porch air hit me first. Then her perfume, expensive, overwhelming, the kind that announces itself before the person wearing it. My mother stood there in a cream coat, hair curled perfectly, smile stretched thin and glossy like plastic wrap. Beside her was Ryan, wearing that smug confidence that always smelled like cheap cologne and entitlement. "Rebecca." Mom's voice dripped with artificial cheer. "Happy birthday, sweetheart. We were just in the area and thought we'd stop by." Behind me, I heard Grandma's chair scrape against the floor. Slow. Deliberate. They didn't wait to be invited in. Ryan carried a gift bag, the kind you give when you already know what you want in return. Mom's eyes swept the house, landing immediately on the folder still sitting on the table. "My inheritance." "We heard about your big gift," she said, tone sweet but laced with something sharp underneath. $50 million. How wonderful. I tried to stay polite. "It's not about the number." Grandma wanted me to continue what she started. Mom laughed, light and airy, waving a manicured hand. Of course. But running a business that size isn't for children. You'll need experience, guidance. She paused, letting the words hang there. "That's why Ryan and I thought we could manage it together. As a family." That word, family, landed like a slap. Ryan leaned forward, resting his hands on the back of a chair. "It's too much for one person, Rebecca. Let us help. We've already drafted a proposal." Grandma's voice cut through his like a knife. "A proposal for something that isn't yours." The air shifted. Ryan's smile faltered. Mom shot Grandma a warning look, that same cold defiance she used to use on Dad. "Mother, please. Let's be practical." "Practical," Grandma repeated, like she was tasting the word. "Like when you mortgaged the Burlington property without authorization. Or when you disappeared for 6 months to expand and came back with debt." Color drained from Mom's face. "That was years ago." "Yes," Grandma said softly. "And I remember every year it cost me." I stood there frozen, tension pressing against my ribs. The room smelled like rosemary and rage. Mom turned back to me, voice brittle now. "Rebecca, don't let her turn you against me. We're family. We should rebuild together." I wanted to believe her. God, part of me really did. But the way she looked at that folder told me everything. This wasn't about rebuilding. It was about reclaiming power she'd already lost. Grandma rose from her chair, placing a steady hand on my shoulder. "Dinner's over," she said calmly. "Some things aren't up for discussion." Ryan cleared his throat, forcing that corporate smile back onto his face. "Of course. We'll talk again soon. But as the door closed behind them, I caught the whisper Mom left hanging in the air. Quiet. Venomous. Meant only for me. This isn't over. And she was right. It wasn't. The next morning, the house felt different. Colder. Like the walls themselves knew what was coming. Grandma spent most of the day in her study, doors closed. I could hear the faint clack of her typewriter, rhythm steadier than my own heartbeat. Downstairs, I found the breakfast table already occupied. My mother sat there with a cup of coffee she hadn't been offered, flipping through one of Grandma's old ledgers like it already belonged to her. Ryan was pacing by the window, on the phone, whispering phrases like potential restructuring and joint control. They didn't see me at first. For a second, I just watched them. Two intruders wearing family as camouflage. Mom finally looked up. Smile crisp, rehearsed. Morning, sweetheart. We were just brainstorming a few things. You know, to keep the business stable. Stable? I kept my voice even. It's been stable for 50 years. She ignored the jab. You're young, Rebecca. You have your studies, your friends. You don't need to stress about payrolls or legal documents. That's what family is for. Ryan nodded, tone oily. Let us take care of the boring parts. You focus on your degree. I felt my pulse climb, but I said nothing. Instead, I walked to the counter, poured myself orange juice, and let the silence stretch until it started to itch. Then I turned to them. Does Grandma know you're here? Mom blinked. Lips tightening. She's resting. Right, I said quietly. Then maybe let her rest. Their eyes followed me as I left the room. Every step echoed like a dare. I found myself shaking when I reached the stairs. Not from fear. From anger. These people had walked into our home uninvited, made themselves comfortable, and started planning my future like I was some kid who couldn't tie her own shoes. That afternoon, I went to Grandma's office. She didn't look surprised when I told her what I'd seen. Just sighed and said, I was hoping they'd at least pretend to wait a week. Do you want me to call the lawyer? I asked. She shook her head. Already did. She opened her drawer and pulled out another folder. Identical to mine. There are things you don't know about your mother and Ryan, she said. Financial documents. Deals that were meant to stay hidden. My stomach tightened. Why didn't you tell me? Because sometimes, Grandma said, eyes meeting mine, the only way to teach someone how to defend what's theirs is to let them feel how easily it can be taken. She spread the documents across her desk. Bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals. Emails between Ryan and shell companies. Contracts signed with Meredith's name but benefiting accounts that had nothing to do with the Sterling collection. They've been bleeding money for 2 years, Grandma said quietly. Small amounts at first. Then bigger. They thought I was too old to notice. How much? I asked. Close to $3 million. The number hit me like cold water. $3 million. Stolen. Not borrowed. Stolen. We spent the rest of the day quietly preparing. Grandma called her attorney. I combed through old files, labeling transactions that didn't add up. The evidence was there. Payments. Transfers. Ghost accounts. By sunset, the house smelled like coffee and dusty paper. Grandma looked tired but calm. Tomorrow, she said, we'll invite them back for dinner. Let them think they've won. I nodded, understanding. If they wanted a stage, we'd give them one. But this time, the script was ours. The invitation was Grandma's idea. A polite message sent that morning, dinner tonight. Let's discuss the transition properly. I watched her type every word with surgical precision. It was bait dressed as peace. By 6, the table was set again. Same oak surface, polished to a shine. Candles waiting to burn through lies. The house smelled like roasted garlic and quiet tension. Grandma had changed into a dark navy dress, the one she wore only for formal negotiations. Her expression gave nothing away. Stay calm, she whispered, placing a silver folder beside my plate. Let them talk first. At 7 sharp, headlights swept across the gravel driveway. The front door opened without a knock. My mother entered first, heels clicking like a metronome of entitlement. She wore red, bold, deliberate, the color of control. Ryan followed, tie loosened, grin wide. Mom said sweetly, kissing the air near Grandma's cheek. "Rebecca." Her voice was smooth but sharp underneath, like glass wrapped in velvet. "I'm glad we're doing this properly. Family decisions deserve transparency," Ryan added. I almost laughed. Dinner began in polite silence. Plates passed, wine poured. But I could feel their impatience, the way Mom's fingers drummed on the table, how Ryan's eyes kept flicking toward the silver folder by my hand. Finally, Mom couldn't resist. "Let's be honest," she said, setting down her fork. "Managing a business of this scale is complex. It's unreasonable to expect a 21-year-old to handle it alone." Grandma sipped her wine, saying nothing. Ryan leaned forward, voice confident. "We've already outlined a plan. I'd handle financial optimization. Meredith would oversee PR. And Rebecca, well, she could shadow us for a while. Learn the ropes." Their words weren't proposals. They were instructions. I set my fork down carefully. "You mean I'd sign ownership over to you both, and you'd manage it?" Ryan's grin tightened. "Temporarily." Grandma looked up, eyes unreadable. "And how exactly would that benefit Rebecca?" Mom's smile grew wider. "It would benefit everyone. We're family, after all." That word again. Family. It felt filthy in her mouth. I took a slow breath. "You're right," I said quietly. "We are family." She leaned back, satisfied. "Good. Then let's." "Which is why," I cut in, "it's time we stop pretending this is about love." Her expression froze. I pushed the folder toward the center of the table. "You wanted transparency. Fine. Let's start with this." Ryan reached for it, but Grandma's hand moved faster. She opened it, fingers tracing the first page. The sound of paper sliding filled the room. Crisp. Final. "These," Grandma said, "are bank statements from the Burlington account. Withdrawals made under Meredith Sterling's signature. Funds that never returned." Mom's face drained of color. "Mother, that's absurd." "And these," Grandma continued evenly, "are emails from Mr. Blackwell's consulting firm. Proposals for overseas expansion. Projects that don't exist. Signed by both of you." Ryan's jaw clenched. "You had no right to." "I had every right," Grandma interrupted, voice like steel. "You tried to mortgage the core hotels under shell companies. You thought I wouldn't notice." The air grew thick. I could hear the fire crackling in the hearth, the only sound brave enough to speak. Mom's eyes darted to me, desperate. "Rebecca, this isn't true. She's twisting things. You can't possibly believe." But I didn't need to answer. Grandma slid one last document across the table. "The ownership amendment," she said. "Effective immediately, all control transfers solely to Rebecca Sterling. You are hereby removed from every board and trust." Mom stared at the page like it might catch fire. "You can't do this," she whispered. "I already have," Grandma said. Silence. Then it came. The explosion. Mom shot up from her chair, voice cracking. "This is my legacy. My life. You can't just hand it to her." Grandma remained seated. "You handed it away yourself." Ryan grabbed Mom's arm, muttering, "Let's just go." But she wasn't done. "No," she shouted, pointing at me. "You think you've won. You're a child playing grown-up. You'll drown in paperwork before the month's out." I met her glare. "Steady. Maybe. But at least it'll be my mess." Her lip trembled, rage fighting humiliation. "Then pack your bags and leave this house," she spat. The same words she'd said days ago. But this time her voice sounded small. That's when Grandma laughed. It wasn't loud. Just a soft, knowing chuckle that sliced the air cleaner than any scream. "You're right, Meredith," she said. "Someone is leaving this house tonight. But it's not Rebecca." Everything froze. Even the fire seemed to stop moving. Grandma reached into her purse and placed another envelope on the table. "A court order," she said simply. "You've both been served. Fraud. Embezzlement. Conspiracy. The investigators are waiting outside." Ryan's face went pale. "You called the police." "I called justice," Grandma said. Mom stumbled back, shaking her head. "You wouldn't. I'm your daughter." "No," Grandma said softly. "You were. Until you sold this family's name for a mirror and a title. 2 officers entered quietly, their presence polite but final. Ryan didn't fight. He just stared at the floor as they led him out. Mom followed, breath ragged, eyes wild, caught between disbelief and despair. At the door, she turned back one last time. Looked right at me. For a second, I thought I saw something real in her eyes. Maybe regret. Maybe just shock that her plan had actually failed. I did this for us, she said quietly. For the family. No, I said. You did it for yourself. There's a difference. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, but nothing came out. Then the officers guided her outside, and she was gone. When the door closed, silence filled the house again. But this time it was different. Lighter. Cleaner. The kind that heals instead of haunts. I sank into my chair, chest tight, hands trembling. Grandma placed her hand over mine. I'm sorry you had to see that. No, I whispered. I needed to. She nodded once, eyes glassy but strong. You handled yourself better than I ever did. I looked at the empty plates, the folded napkins, the remnants of the storm we'd just survived. Do you think she'll ever forgive us? I asked quietly. Grandma sighed. Forgiveness is for people who admit what they've done. Your mother still thinks she was robbed. The fire popped softly, throwing gold across the table. I realized then that this house, the same one where my father walked out years ago, where every fight echoed louder than love, finally felt still. Safe. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, red and blue lights painted the driveway. Ryan sat in the back of a cruiser. Mom stood frozen near the porch, mascara streaking down her face. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't even feel relief. Just an ache, deep and quiet. For the family we could have been. Grandma joined me, her reflection beside mine in the glass. You did good, Rebecca, she said. You didn't raise your voice. You raised your worth. Her words settled in my chest like something permanent. As the last car disappeared down the hill, the night finally exhaled. We didn't toast. Didn't celebrate. We just sat in the quiet glow of the fire. 2 women who'd survived the same bloodline in different decades, finally breaking the pattern. The morning after felt unreal. The same house that had echoed with shouting now hummed with quiet, the kind that follows a storm. Sunlight slipped through the curtains, landing on the folder still sitting at the center of the table. Grandma was already up, sipping coffee in the kitchen like nothing extraordinary had happened. But her shoulders looked lighter, her face softer, as if decades of weight had finally lifted. The news spread fast. Ryan disappeared from the state before the investigation could close. My mother stayed just long enough to watch her name unravel in every business circle she once worshipped. The fraud case stripped her of everything: money, position, pride. She called once. 3 weeks after that night. I almost didn't answer. I need help, she said. No hello. No apology. Just those 3 words. With what? I asked. Legal fees. A place to stay. Anything. I closed my eyes. Part of me, the little girl who used to wait by the window hoping Mom would come home, wanted to say yes. But Grandma had taught me something important. Kindness isn't the same as enabling. I can't do that, I said. You have $50 million, she hissed. And you won't help your own mother. You stole from this family, I said quietly. From Grandma. From me. And you still don't think you did anything wrong. Silence on the other end. When you're ready to actually talk, I said, not just ask for money, call me. Until then, I hope you figure things out. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt clear. Maybe for the first time in my life. Dad came by that afternoon. No speeches, no questions. He simply placed a hand on Grandma's shoulder and said, you did the right thing. When his eyes met mine, they didn't hold pity. Only pride. Your mother called me too, he said. Asked if I'd talk to you. Convince you to help her. What did you say? I told her Rebecca makes her own decisions now. And that maybe it's time she learned to do the same. We sat together on the porch, the 3 of us. Dad told stories about the early days, when Grandma was building the first hotel, when Mom was young and still had dreams that weren't about being famous. She wasn't always like this, he said. There was a time when she actually cared about the work. What changed? I asked. Dad thought for a moment. She started measuring success by what other people saw instead of what she built. Once that happens, you're never satisfied. There's always someone with more, someone doing better. Grandma nodded. I tried to teach her. But some lessons people have to learn on their own. Weeks later, life began to look almost ordinary again. I finished my final architecture presentation. Graduated top of my class. Grandma insisted we celebrate quietly at the hotel's rooftop. No press, no guests. Just us. She raised her glass and said, "To new foundations." And as the city lights glowed below, I realized that was exactly what this was. A rebuild. Not of property or reputation, but of peace. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the leftover of someone else's legacy. I felt like the beginning of my own. I used to believe legacy was about bloodlines and last names. But I've learned it's about boundaries. The courage to end what's toxic, even when it wears your DNA. My inheritance wasn't a hotel. It was freedom. Thanks for listening, and if you like this story, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself when family crosses the line. Sometimes the hardest person to say no to is the one who's supposed to love you most.